on a Friday morning. For those of you in Western Kentucky, I'll try to make sure that you get home before dark. I was wondering if James Lee was listening. Okay, I would like to call to order the Kentucky Community and Technical College System Board of Regents meeting to order. I'd like to ask Ms. Young, the parliamentarian, to please call the roll.
Chair Martin.
Here.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Here.
Secretary Witten.
Here.
Regent Cox.
Here.
Regent Girdler. Regent Hall.
Here.
Regent Higdon.
Here.
Regent Powers.
Here.
Regent Rabinowitz.
Here.
Regent Schaus. Here. Regent Stevens.
Here.
Regent Sutherland.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now, I would call upon Regent and Audit Chair Russ Cox to give the most important committee report for the day.
As I say, the most exciting of
Most exciting.
all the committees. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, I thought it was appropriate we start out today. First, when we talk about this, I do have a lot of, I try to keep people engaged with this, but this is a very serious and very important committee of this group. And I've certainly appreciated Dr. Quarles really emphasizing at the beginning of his tenure his importance of this, and in the request for me to serve as chair of this, I felt very empowered to do the right things and to make certain that the right things were happening as a board of regents, and I do appreciate that. And I think it gives us a great opportunity to continue the philosophy of transparency, openness. I've always said that as regents, as trustees, if you have a question and don't ask it, you're not fulfilling your duty as a trustee or regent. So please don't think, gosh, I should probably know the answer to this, or I'm afraid to ask this because I'll appear stupid. I will tell you, I've appeared stupid endless times as chair of this committee, and you always bounce back from it. Believe me, it's no problem at all. Today is an important day for us because there's a lot of information for us to disseminate. If you look at your information that was sent to you on onboarding, you can see that we have posted the very first thing there from the quarterly audit report from Dean Dorton. As you can see, it's been a very thorough examination that's taken place. And we had a report out from that. You can look down through the issues that are there. As an audit committee, we typically spend a lot of time looking at the things that create the most risk for us. And we have the periodic college audits that you can see there. I don't necessarily need to read to you. Big Sandy went through this process, low risk observation. As you can see, the I-9, it is an important form that we do. We obviously easily fixable, but something that was cited there. Southeast Kentucky, no observations were identified. So I always feel like that's a victory when those things happen. And while I-9s are important, if we're going to find something, I'll take that. It's easily remediated. IT has become a very important part of our audit process, and it's going to be that way going forward. So doing the key control testing is always going to be important there. And as you can see there, everything appeared to be in good order. Audits are a rolling process, a quarterly process. They're part of a work plan that we undertake on a regular basis. So there's rolling sorts of things that happen that we follow up on. I'm not going to read to you all the moderate and low risks. You can see there. I think it is important if you consider the whistleblower side of that. If you go to the all three that were audited in December 2024, came back at low risk, which I think is very good, which means that we are extremely compliant with making certain that we have systems in place that allow us to make certain that we are being transparent, doing the right things as we go. So again, this is a rolling process. We felt like as an audit committee that this was a extremely good report for this quarter. Feel very good about where things are. Can we always do better? Absolutely. But is there anything that as a board of regents should raise our eyebrows? No. And I think that's a great aspect of that. Are there any questions that you have, any thoughts that you have on the quarterly audit report on the internal audit? because we're going to get into some depth on the state examination, the forensic audit, as well as the external audit here in just a few minutes. But I always look at it as the audit committee really needs to be looking at this internal audit to make sure that we are upholding what we say we are. And for this quarter, I felt very good that we passed the test with flying colors here. Any questions?
Any questions about that audit? We only have one down, two to go. Real
Very
quick, I'd
true.
like to recognize Regent McGraw. She is on here. I don't think we took roll, so we've got that recorded. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, Regent Cox.
We can go forward at this point and discuss. I guess we're going to start with the state examination. Todd, is that right? Forensic, okay.
Would you like us to go ahead and start, or was anybody going to do an introduction? Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Click. I'm a partner in the forensic services practice at KPMG. We were engaged by KCTCS to assist in a number of activities that were a result of the state audit that came out. Just to kick things off and to let everybody know, first of all, good morning. It's great to see everybody. I did want to share before I kick it over to Mike Doyle, who I worked with closely on this important project. The people from KCTS, everybody that we interacted with, were fantastic, very cooperative. I can assure you that doing forensic audits like this, Mike and I do these a lot. That's not always the case. But I did want to assure you that everybody that we worked with was extremely cooperative, provided us the information that we requested in a timely manner, which really enabled us to complete our work and be able to provide feedback and inputs back to the KCTCS team in a really mostly in a timely manner, so that way you can start to evaluate what those observations are and start to make changes quickly. So thank you to the entire team. Thank you for entrusting KPMG and our team with this important project. We do want to provide you some of our observations at a high level. I believe you've had an opportunity to see the report, but nonetheless, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mike Doyle, and we'll walk you through some of those observations. Mike?
Great. Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. So what I'm going to present today is a report that KPMG provided to KCTS as of October 31st, 2024. First, I'd like to walk you through how we structured the report. First, we went through the background of why we were engaged, what our objectives were. Then we go into the scope area and the results. Since we had 10 distinct different projects that we were trying to accomplish here, what we've done is we provided a snapshot of each of the 10. And then, as you can see in the final report section, we then provide a separate individual full report for each one of the tasks that we were assigned to work through. So what was our overall objectives was to verify the integrity and accuracy of the financials in accordance with GAAP, to assess the effectiveness of the internal controls and risk management practices and policies and procedures, to identify and investigate any instances of fraud, theft, or waste or abuse, and provide guidance and recommendations on any improvements that we can provide based on the work that we performed. KPMG was assigned 10 separate individual tasks, and we're going to go through each one of these. However, I just want to address one item before we start. As part of the state auditor's report, there was a question about a $421 million journal entry. That journal entry occurred in 2003. It's a $421 million journal entry that, per the state auditor's report, was to go through the 10,001 account. As you can see here from the journal entry, it does not actually touch the 10,001 account. What this is a year-end top-end entry that occurred back then and still occurs today in the closing entries of the process. And what this is the journal entry that gets occurred every year to ensure that the fund balances are accurately reported for the closing balance of the year. Due to the state retention policy, the documentation related to this journal entry is not available and should not be available if the policy is followed properly, which it has been. So now to get into each one of the individual tasks that KPMG was assigned to review. The first was the reconciliation of 10,001 account. KPMG reconciled the 10,001 account from the fiscal years 2003 through fiscal year 2023. We are able to identify the inflows and outflows of this account and reconcile the account back to the trial balance for each of the years from 2003 through 2023. The main thing that we found during our reconciliation was the high number of activity going through this account. For this to be a pass-through account, the expectation is that something would go in and then immediately move on to where it belongs. What we found was that there was so much going into this account that it was hard for anybody to be reconciling it accurately on a regular basis. What the recommendation that we provided was that there should be a review of the 656 accounts that are passing through this 10,001 account, and also that there should be a periodic review of this account to ensure that the proper accounts are being used for this account. I believe both of those recommendations have been accepted, and I believe the committee to review this account is already being prepared. For affiliated foundations, KPMG reviewed the affiliated foundations for their independence and to examine the disbursements of these foundations. What we found is that the foundations generally have the processes in place to ensure appropriate funding. However, they implemented the formal policies and procedures can benefit the foundation to ensure consistency and compliance with disbursement policies. I apologize, my dog is screaming right. Executive compensation. KPMG reviewed the executive compensation for 40 executives from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2024. What we found was that while most of the 40 executives adhered to the compensation policies, we did notice that there was weaknesses identified. There was weaknesses aligning the contracts to the terms. There was improper payment ranges and the timeliness of the contracts being signed. For the FERPA review, KPMG reviewed the Office of Financial Aid's adherence to FERPA. We found that there was 10 colleges that we had no compliance issues identified for the 5 years. We found that there was 6 that did have a FERPA non-compliance issue identified. However, the end result, they did comply with federal regulations. And we found that there was 2 colleges that partially adhere to best practices. For the financial statements review, KPMG reviewed the general ledgers from 2000 through 2023 through KPMG's data analytical tool called KDAT. What KDAT does is it analyzes the entire general ledger and identifies each of the journal entries and reviews them across a series of risk factors. Based on those risk factors, we identified sample transactions for each of the years. KPMG, based on their state's contention policy, the journal entry support was not available for journal entries from 2000 through 2020. As I said, this was with the policy, and this should not have been available and was not available in alliance with policy. However, the support was only available for 70% of the journal entries that were available from 2001 to 2003. There was some support, but it was not the full support that we would be expected to receive. We did learn through reviews and discussions that the support that was missing should have been loaded by the local colleges when they were submitting their expenses. Higher education. KPMG conducted a comprehensive review of the procurement procedures, particularly focused on professional service agreements. KPMG found, based on the 25 professional service contracts that KPMG reviewed, the procurement processes appeared to be followed. However, again, the KPMG determined that the procurement procedures can be strengthened by developing a detailed checklist that can utilize for each contract and contain the procurement requirements based on the contract values. Marketing and PR. KPMG reviewed the transactions related to marketing and PR and through how they passed through their P card. KPMG found that generally the transactions related to the P card for marketing and PR did comply with the transaction policy approval policies. However, we did find that there was a large number of the transactions for these activities were approved after the transaction did occur. Personnel and unit investigations. KPMG reviewed a number of external investigations that were conducted over the past few years. KPMG organized the results and the recommendations from these investigations into 15 distinct themes. 9 of the themes were found to be fully implemented and requiring no further action. 5 of the themes determined that they were partially implemented, and 1 of the themes seemed to not be implemented at this time at all. KPMG discussed this with the related parties, and they are working through to implement the items that are still in process. P cards. In addition to the marketing and PR, KPMG did a larger review of all P card activity related to KCTS. First thing KPMG did was we created a dashboard of all the activity from the P cards, and we, based on that, reviewed and identified high-risk transactions. We selected a number of transactions for review from the years of 2018 through fiscal year 2024. Again, the high risk that we found was that the majority of the 62% of the transactions were approved after the fact. Voluntary separation agreements. KPMG reviewed the voluntary separation agreements for consistency and legal compliance. Based on the assessment of 25 voluntary separate agreements, the following was noted. Some of the agreements were not properly routed through HR, legal, or payroll. Payment amounts did not agree to the agreement itself. Inadequate approvals were provided for some of the agreements, and there was a failure to demonstrate the 21-day consideration or 7-day revocation period. As I said, the rest of the report is a full detailed report of each one of these reviews that KPMG has conducted. I believe everyone has received this report in advance for review. So at this time, we open up the floor to anybody who has any questions based on my comments or the review that you've conducted.
I'm thinking if I were sitting around this table and hadn't had the opportunity to look at this, a question that would come up in my mind would be talk a little bit more about the executive compensation side and the voluntary separation agreement side. Please stop me where I misspeak, but one of the things as I've read this and looked at is we're not talking about malfeasance from the standpoint of any abuse of anything outside of the norm. We're talking about process issues that need to be corrected and streamlined and really more systematized is my way of thinking. That's not to say that that's not important and we can't do it better, but I don't want Regents around the table to think that this audit found that there were issues as to how things were happening with executive compensation or with voluntary separation agreements. Is that a fair way of putting this?
That is a correct statement. Correct. The issues that we did find with both of these areas were more with compliance and following the compliance process, not that the values were inappropriate or not accurately accounted for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. Regent Shaw.
So what Regent Cox was saying, like it was not like mishandled. It was just not documented correctly.
In
Correct.
some cases, and in some cases, there was documented is a very important part of this. But I think in some cases also it was a lack of maybe awareness that there was a need for coordination between parties or between entities. Is that accurate?
Yes, and so I was going to make a few comments here, if you don't mind,
Sure.
that when we go back in time, we requested the forensic audit to cure the state audit from last year. And we viewed it here as an opportunity to have a catch-all opportunity for us to look at anything that we may have a suspicion or have heard of, especially the onboarding of me as the new president during my first year. Just wanted to kind of get an inventory of things that need to be fixed here, whether it be a hole in the parking lot to something major. So first off, I just want to say thank you to everybody involved with the forensic audit and the other audits as well. Auditors are our friends. They allow us to identify areas of improvement. And the attitude we have here is embrace the findings, improve the organization, and implement so we can move forward. One small thing that I think should not be overlooked is that the completion of this forensic audit cures our state audit, which we'll be talking about a little bit more next. That's something we should celebrate. Secondly, we don't have to refer any of these findings to yet another agency in Kentucky. And that allows us to, again, implement, embrace, and improve our organization. And then finally, it allows us to focus on the bigger picture issues that this organization is going to challenge starting next month. And so I appreciate what the forensic audit has yielded. A lot of this stuff, again, new to me, maybe new to some of our new regents, but it allows us to go ahead and put an implementation plan in. And that's something we've actually have already started with Todd Kilburn. And the big picture is that we can focus on our future, which includes the carryover amount, the 75 million, which we've talked about, which has been publicized. It allows us to come back to the March meeting and have a discussion about what an appropriate reserve policy should be for KCTCS prior to the June budget approval. And Mr. Kilburn, would you mind talking about our implementation groups that we've already started?
There we go. If you could pull that up, we're forming two particular groups. One is to implement the recommendations from KPMG around this account 10,001. So we would like to have this working group that will evaluate those 656 accounts. There's a lot of money that comes into this pass-through account. It's the account where we receive all of our tuition and our state appropriation, and then it's distributed to the colleges. There were a lot of transactions here. And part of their recommendation is that it's a lot to manage and balance on a regular basis. So we want to establish a working group that's actually going to take a look at that and determine how many of those accounts we actually need. Can we redirect some of those things to do a quarterly review and balance it out, and then report to me on a quarterly basis of where that account stands, how we're doing with things, and they will be sort of the gatekeepers of that account, so that anyone who wants to make some sort of transaction through the account 10,001 will actually have to get approval if it's not an already approved account. That will minimize the number of accounts and minimize the amount of workload that we have. And so we are looking for the evaluation to be done by June 30th, and then the implementation of the reporting process, once we have that all in place, to begin shortly after at the beginning of the next fiscal year. Regarding the carry forward, which was, I think, part of the question here, but really didn't get resolved, I'd like to establish a working group with representatives from the system office and the colleges as a whole to make recommendations around how we manage the carry forward, how we can provide transparency around what the carry forward is and how it's managed between the colleges and the system office, to think about our reserve policy and how much we should have in reserve and where that lives, how we're managing a number of things like our OPEB trust, just to make sure everybody knows transparently what we're doing, how we're doing it, and we're all on the same page. And using some research from NACUBO and other organizations to do that. And then be able to make some of those recommendations. Some we can implement, some may be connected to the SJR recommendations around how we fund the system office in the long term. But if we could get a collaborative group of people to work together to say, as a system, we're going to figure this out together, we believe that's the correct direction forward. I talked to Dr. Quarles about this week, and I'm in the process of recruiting those members for those two working groups to move forward.
Any questions from the Regents? Okay, and KPMG representatives are still online, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I have a question. For all the people that are out there watching, the state legislators, the faculty, the staff, the students, do they have any areas of concern for us as an organization with the way we're doing things? Other than the areas of improvement that you guys have identified?
No, I think, from my opinion, I think it's the areas that we identified. It's improving the policies and procedures and making them, adherence to them, more consistently. I think
Okay.
that's really where the focus is, where I would put your focus going forward.
And I would add to that, it's normal for us when we do these types of examinations to identify opportunities for improvement. That is a normal course of things that happen. So I would not be alarmed by any of the observations that we had. I do think if you think about a continuous improvement model, these are giving you opportunities and recommendations to continuously improve your systems of controls in these particular areas. I would not be alarmed. I don't think you should be alarmed. I do think that as you continue on down the path, you should continually look to see, what are you doing? Are we following all the processes that we have? Can we enhance those policies or those processes to make sure we're always doing things in the best way possible? But I think it's fair to say, and it was mentioned earlier, we did not identify any malfeasance, any intentional wrongdoings, or things like that. What we did find is opportunities for process control improvements and continuous improvement for the overall organization. But to answer your question very directly, no, there should not be any concerns that there's wrongdoing. We did not identify any of that. But I do think there's that, like I said, continuous opportunity for improvement.
Okay, and no mismanagement of funds, right?
We did not identify any mismanagement of funds, correct?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for all your hard work. And any other questions? Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I'd also mention that in general, as we are taking a look at this, we've identified really from the business side 4 things we need to do. One, you've already heard that we're doing is to update our policies, make sure we have the right policies in place, making sure if there are additional policies we need or they need to be updated, we take care of the policy issue. That we build clear procedures around what those policies are so people know what the expectation is. Thirdly, we then train. We provide greater training for that. I think that's one of the areas that we determined from this where we can do more training because we have staff turnover. Some of these issues came with new staff who were just learning the process. And so we want to make sure that we do good training around that. And then fourthly, to build in some testing and accountability that when those things are we do find a violation of that we work with people, that we try to help them, that we try to make sure that we have full compliance. And we've already talked to both Dean Dorton, our internal auditors. We've conversed with our external auditors, who you'll hear from shortly, about how they can help us build in that testing for the long term so that we're doing that internally and catching things at a quicker pace. And in essence, metaphorically, putting our arms around our staff and saying, we want to help you to succeed, and here's how we can do better in the future.
I think it's
Thank
extremely well said. Just to, in your mind, classify this, I've had to. So we've talked about the internal audit where we're looking at very much the intricacies of how we do things. We just talked about the forensic audit. And now we're going to talk about the external.
Correct.
Correct. So anybody who thinks that we have not really done a lot of examination is very misinformed. And I think that, you know, philosophically, where I feel this organization has come is to now using audit as a learning, development, betterment process as opposed to punitive. And I think that's a significant culture transformation that we need to embrace going forward with people. Is this is what makes us better. Let's don't fear this process. Let's welcome it. And I think we've made great strides towards that.
I think those are great comments, and the fact that we now have a full-time person here that does nothing but policy review. She's here, Mallory's here, and a lot of work ahead of us. And, you know, earlier this year identified that 80% of our internal policies could be considered out of date. And so, again, we embrace the findings. It's good governance. We appreciate the opportunity to go through this. We want to say thank you to the General Assembly to help fund. They put in $1 million in the budget to help fund this as well. And so we look forward to using this to guide us to the next level of KCTCS.
Okay.
And we do take these recommendations very seriously. We're working to implement them. But I would also say, I just want to commend our staff for doing, you know, much good work around this. There was a lot of effort that went into this. Our staff work very hard and always go the extra mile. And I just want to commend them in the process of this. There's a lot of extra work on top of their jobs, and want to thank them publicly for all the work that went into this. We've got a great team.
The board would like to thank him as well. Thank you all as well. Thank you primarily. We do need to take action on this, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But any other questions before we entertain a motion?
Then he brings it as a motion.
Okay, brings it as a motion. Do we need a second? Second. Okay. keep going.
That was Regent Cox and Regent Hamilton.
Yes.
I am going to announce that Regent Girdler has also joined us online. I apologize for missing you all this morning. And as a reminder, you do need to be seen and heard during this vote. Chair Martin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton, Secretary Witten,
Yes.
Regent Cox,
Yes.
Regent Girdler. Regent Girdler,
Can't hear
we
you
can't hear you.
for some reason. Thumbs up.
Okay.
We'll take that.
Regent Hall,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent McGraw,
Yes.
Regent Powers,
Yes.
Regent Rabinowitz,
Yes.
Regent Schaus,
Yes.
Regent Stevens,
Yes.
Regent Sutherland.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Todd, would you continue with the state examination?
So as a matter of update, the state examination report has still been outstanding for the last several board meetings due to the fact that we were in the midst of this forensic audit. And with the completion of the forensic audit, we have reached out to the Auditor of Public Accounts to indicate that we've completed the expectations from the state examination. They have sent back notification that they're in receipt of that. So that would close the matter of the state examination. There's nothing for the board to vote on. It is just a matter of information, though, that expectation has now been taken care of with this forensic audit.
Okay, any questions?
Not a question, but a comment. Just to let you all know, it's not on the agenda today, but we have another audit in the works with this Auditor of Public Accounts, Auditor Ball, and that's the Kentucky Fire Commission as well. And so they're actually in process. We're expecting results from that sometime late spring, maybe summer for that. So just to let you all know, there's another one in the works that was welcomed by the Kentucky Fire Commission Board at my request, and it was a unanimous vote to proceed with a state audit. So we'll keep you informed with that as the results come in. Thank you.
And then the final audit item that we have this morning is the external financial audit with Forrest Mazars. They are here. So Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you and your team to provide the report.
Thank you, Todd. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I am Jennifer Williams, a partner with Forvis Mazars, and I lead the financial statement audit. And then I have Jenny Duckworth with me as well. She's a director and leads the uniform guidance. So we are just going to provide some brief comments. We did go over a detailed review with the audit committee. They did have a lot of auditors that were on one call with them presenting information to them. So we really appreciate your time and respect that you have a lot on your agenda today. So from the external audit standpoint, we accomplished the audit plan and the timeline. As you can imagine, with the state examination report and the forensic audit going on as well, that did impact our timing of releasing the report. So this external audit is pretty hot off the press. It was issued this week with the team. So we really appreciate, as everybody has noted, the group here is really responsive, very cooperative as we work through this process. And they had a lot of people asking them a lot of questions. So to go through all those questions and get through this audit process, again, just like to commend the team and how well they work with us and get us the information that we need. We did issue an unmodified or clean opinion, as you can see on the financial statements. There were no audit adjustments that we had in the financial statements that are prepared by management. We did have one, what we call past adjustment. It's an item really that was a timing perspective related to lease accounting and depreciation. And so what we say was that was not material enough to be reflected on the financial statements. And so we had approved that as a past adjustment. You will note that the financial statements are prepared on a single year presentation. This is allowed under the standards. There is, this year it was nice. There was no new GASB standards that had to be adopted in the financial statement. So that did help in that process as well, as we've been through a handful of them that had to be adopted. But there will be one next year. It is called compensated absences, and it looks at how your policy is, and you may have an additional liability that needs to be recorded based on how that how your policies are written and how the standard is written. But generally, it will be a single year presentation as well next year because of the way the adoption works with those accounting standards. A good item to note too, we did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls over financial reporting. So no items that we had noted there in our review. And as I mentioned, there was no new standards adopted or any significant changes to the financial statement. So the footnotes are very comparable to what you had seen in the past. And we went over high level with the amounts in those financial statements with the audit committee. So was not going to go through those numbers with you today. But I will let Joni speak in regards to the uniform guidance piece of the audit.
Good morning. So for the uniform guidance, or what we call the single audit, that's reviewing the expenditure of federal awards. And there were 3 major programs that we looked at during this audit, and those were the Student Financial Assistance Cluster, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and the third one was the Coronavirus State, Local, and Fiscal Recovery Funds, which per the compliance supplement was identified as a high-risk type program. I'm happy to announce that there were no written findings within the single audit report, and there also were no identified material weaknesses nor significant deficiencies for internal control over compliance, nor compliance findings itself. That concludes our comments. Are there any questions that we can answer?
Any questions?
I'd like to thank you all for the great work that you've done on this, but I'd like to also echo the cooperation and willingness of staff that you work with. It's not a, you all make it as pleasant as it can be, but it's not a fun process. And I think it went very well this year, so I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Todd, any more audits to go over?
No. The board does need to accept, the external audit.
Okay.
And, but other than that, we have no more audits. And we're not inclined to make ones up. this morning.
Sounds good. Now it's time to get to work on implementing the recommendations and doing the day-to-day, right?
That's right.
Okay, then, with that being said, we need a motion that the KCTCS Board of Regents accepts the Forvis Mazars audited financial statements. Do I hear a motion? Okay, Regent Sutherland, second. Regent Cox, did you? Second. Second? Oh. Regent Cox. Okay. So, Parliamentarian Young?
Chair Martin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hamilton,
Yes.
Secretary Witten,
Yes.
Regent Cox,
Yes.
Regent Girdler, Regent Hall,
Yes.
Regent Higdon,
Yes.
Regent McGraw,
Yes.
Regent Powers,
Yes.
Regent Rabinowitz,
Yes.
Regent Schaus,
Yes.
Regent Stevens,
Yes.
and Regent Sutherland.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you all. Regent Girdler, we missed hearing your voice today. That's okay. Okay, then, next agenda item, we'll hear from, we won't hear from Ms. Schultz, but
Megan.
Megan. Megan will be here to give us a report on workforce and economic development update.
Appreciate Vice President Shook being here today. I think she's lost her voice. So we'll have Dr. Stitt present
Yes,
today.
Jesse's worked so hard this week, her voice has worn out before she did. So I have the honor of presenting the workforce update, but all the credit is due to Jesse and her team. Do I have there we go. Thank you. So we have several grants in process with the National Science Foundation and are excited to share two opportunities. The Game Change Grant, which is led by the University of Kentucky and works to support sustainable manufacturing across Kentucky and Tennessee. So this would build on a lot of existing assets within KCTCS if this award is successful. We are working to submit two full proposals early in the new year. And this Engines program offered by NSF is new to KCTCS. So this would be a new grant opportunity to pursue and would give access to over $160 million, not all to one grantee, but a new pool to open up for KCTCS resources. The KYAME grant is led by the Kentucky Science and Technology Corporation and works to support additive manufacturing or 3D printing technology. So this is a unique niche for KCTCS to be in, which will allow industry to improve speed to market, improve supply chains, and also difficult manual manufacturing functions that can be improved through the use of these grant resources. KCTCS already has programming around this area, so this would be a perfect opportunity to collaborate with the KYAME grant. So both grants, if successful, would position KCTCS to be a significant driver of providing training for jobs of the future. This map here shows how KCTCS continues to identify employer partners across the state, and to date has identified over 3,150 partnerships. This slide might be a little difficult to see, but it shows how we are working with these companies, and not so much even just about the categories themselves, but shows that we are working with companies in a number of ways to support students. These partnerships allow us to better facilitate career exploration, work-based learning, and skill building with continuous improvement of programs and curricula to ensure that our students are graduating with in-demand skills and ultimately have successful post-completion outcomes. As a reminder, these are not just transactional engagements, but these are ways that colleges are deeply engaged with companies working towards mutually beneficial goals. Just maintaining this data, as you can imagine, is a challenge, but it is important to make sure that we're using it to advance opportunities for the colleges and their external engagement teams, which are made up of leaders from across advancement and their foundations, academics, workforce, and student affairs to meet regularly and identify opportunities together. We just had a great meeting this week, and it was really encouraging to hear best practices and ideas from other colleges and look at ways we can adopt those collaborations locally. These teams are working to strategically deepen relationships with employers. And that, again, is not easy, but the system has provided a great framework to bring these relationships and collaborations together. You can see also on this slide that over 500 employers have been identified who offer tuition assistance. So these might be great companies to pitch the Education First Employers Initiative to. There is a significant scope of work nationally emerging about the importance of these partnerships, and it is really exciting to see KCTCS driving and being a leader in this space. Our data collection and maintenance, coupled with the external engagement team model, positions us to be really a leader in this area in the future. Finally, the state workforce and talent team has met, and not only are we working to improve the employer relationships that we talked about previously, but are a core partner in supporting this scope of work externally across the Commonwealth. KCTCS has been serving on the leadership team of SWAT, the statewide workforce and talent team, and initial discussions on the need to simplify our business engagement processes. So after 2 years of planning and coordination, the first ever SWAT convening meeting concluded yesterday afternoon in Lexington, and it brought together over 250 workforce practitioners, educators, and training providers representing more than 90 organizations. The goal of this initiative is to create a unified approach to business services, making it easier for employers to navigate Kentucky's workforce assets, ultimately deepening relationships and allowing us to serve more companies. One of the key takeaways from this convening is that relationships between practitioners are already strong, but they rely on the fact that two professionals have a strong relationship and work together to serve companies, but that's not a strategy. It provides no safeguard against turnover within companies or workforce organizations. So SWAT aims to formalize, operationalize, and incentivize this collaboration. Local workforce areas are engaged in in-depth planning sessions during the breakouts, and some of the critical gaps that SWAT will address moving forward is the need for a common CRM, like the one we use currently in workforce called Salesforce, which provides information on who we're working with and how and what development we have taken around professional goals and the identification of common goals and objectives. SWAT members were also vocal that they want to have concrete steps and soon. So several local areas have already scheduled meetings before the end of the year to continue building on this work and advancing the ways that we work together. So I'm glad I have talking points for this one because I may have recently performed this song as part of a karaoke competition fundraiser. So if I said it without any prompting, my folks in Elizabethtown would be like, this is just because you like early 90s rap. But I'll leave you with a tagline that Dr. Quarles coined, quoting a well-known musician. So somebody in the room should get bonus points if you know who this is. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Say that again. Stop, collaborate, and listen. It can be hard to slow down. The work pulls us in so many different directions, but it's important to slow down and be strategic and design strategies so that Kentucky will be the national frontrunner in bringing together our partners so that many workforce assets can work toward a common vision of workforce success in the Commonwealth. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you have that Jesse or I will do my best to address as well, but that the workforce team could address for you today.
Vanilla Ice.
Yes, I was wondering who was going to get it. Oh, good. Y'all are a fun group. I knew it.
I was on a panel discussion at SWAT, I think on Wednesday, and I said I was driving in this morning trying to think about how to simply and correctly characterize SWAT. Something that happened long before I started, and Jesse's been on this for 2 years now, and Vanilla Ice came to mind. So they played the song when they concluded the conference yesterday, so multiple times. But the SWAT initiative, I think, has so much merit to it. And I mentioned it yesterday on the statewide workforce plan recommendation at the SJR, is that we have a lot of things going for us as a state. There's a lot of economic development, a lot of job openings, and there's different approaches towards economic development, which we embrace, but this allows us to be on the same page. Going to a reception, getting a business card, and having that chance meeting oftentimes opens the door, but you don't know if the Cabinet for Economic Development has already been talking to this company for several months. Or maybe one of the colleges has already had a formal, long-standing partnership with one of these companies, or they're approaching us from the ad level or from the county level as well. And so the work that Jesse and the other counterparts have made over the past year, I think is very impressive. It was rolled out by the governor on Wednesday at this 2-day conference in Lexington. But it's about getting us all on the same page. I think it's going to really, it's going to require trust of other organizations, discipline as well, to know that you got to pick up the phone and say and inform your other partners as well. But it puts us all on the same team. I think in fact, we believe we may be the first state in the nation to look at this, and Deloitte was there taking notes about what's going on in Kentucky. So we're happy to be part of it, and it's also going to shape where we should ramp up and operate at KCTCS, but also will shape where there might be duplication in the process that we no longer need to do, reduce expenditure of resources where other partners may already be in that space as well. The other thing, previous slide showed over 3,100 business connections. We touch base with over 7,000 businesses a year, but true partnerships with well over 3,100 businesses. And that's a number not to be taken lightly. I think that's a success story and one that we should talk about more. I'm certainly talking about it more with interviews, we're talking with legislators, et cetera, just to remind them about what we do on the workforce side of the house here at KCTCS. And then the previous discussion about National Science Foundation grants, a lot of people may not associate the community and technical colleges with these sorts of grant opportunities, but we fit squarely in there. And we're going to continue to be very aggressive, especially now with a dedicated external affairs position with Chris, is that it's a good time to be in workforce development as a country, a good time to be, and we talked about this just recently yesterday about the workforce needs of our state. I think there's more willingness now than ever for there to be grant opportunities for the 2 years and technical programs as well. And we want to be very aggressive on that, including second chance employers as well. Anything else, Jesse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question for you, just real quick. So the grants, are those, have we already applied for them or about to apply for them when we find out the results of those? How much money? Can you tell us that, Megan? Can you translate for?
Yeah. We received type 1 funding.
Okay.
You say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got that.
So it's the type 1 funding, we're in the next phase, type 2 funding, which there's up to $160 million
Okay.
at play. And then this is on top of what we're doing with our automotive working group
Mhm.
And other groups that may be formed. We have a lot of growth in the battery industry. A new plant just announced in Shelbyville, which will be making batteries not for EVs, but for housing units and very large scale batteries. So that might be another area that we might focus on. But 3D printing, I know a lot's going on across our system, so especially BCTC, but also Somerset as well. So this is an area where people may not know our story, but if we get a chance to look at some of these labs, they look like Henry Ford's invention space. It's incredible. A lot of people may not realize this.
When do you think we'll get the results of saying, here's your money? Do you know, a year from now or? Okay.
For those watching at home, we submit in February and we hope to get a site visit sometime in the spring if we advance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
With
No
results
pressure.
by September 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there may or may not be a video of Megan and Rap.
There is. I can never run for office now. It's on the internet somewhere. We will lay down our dignity for a good cause any day. All right.
We'll
Well,
be looking for it on YouTube.
hopefully it hasn't made it there. I have the honor of continuing to talk about partnerships with you today with our institutional advancement update. While those slides are pulled up, I did just want to touch on a couple things from the forensic audit that were specific to the foundations. First, I think it's also important to note that all the foundations go through an annual audit as well. So I know that's the name of the game today, and we were very appreciative of the foundations responding to the forensic audit in addition to their annual audits that they were already going through. One of the things you might have noticed in the report were some documents, especially things like conflict of interest, code of ethics, and confidentiality. Some foundations that were missing those documents, oftentimes it showed up as separate missing pieces of information, but typically that is all included in one document in process. So that is a good example of something that's very easy for us to correct moving forward. And this is something that had not been previously requested by the system before to the foundations. So we're creating an annual calendar of when the foundations will need to provide the information requested in our recognition standards, so that on an annual basis, we're gathering this information routinely. So I'm excited about the recommendations that have given us some guidance to improve our processes, but anticipate having any of the related recommendations for the foundations cleared up in early 2025. So moving into our update about philanthropy across the system, I'm excited to share that since the last time we were together, we have had nearly $5 million in contributions raised from over 1,500 donors. And that is really exciting as we head into the end of the year giving season. This is a great time where we're receiving a lot of larger major gifts for folks that may be making especially those tax decisions this time of year. So we anticipate being about where we were this time last year and hoping to hit that target again of around $20 million raised by the end of this fiscal year. I think it's also important to see that we have had over 9 new endowment accounts and 25 new gift accounts opened across 10 colleges. Why that's important is it shows the scope of new work that the colleges and foundations are undertaking. So typically that means gifts for a new purpose or a new partnership. So not just a lot of work with current donors, but creating new partnerships and relationships. These relationships are key to funding scholarships. I'm excited to share that our applications are open across the system for the new academic year, which I know sounds really far away, 25, 26, but it'll be here before we know it. So if you have any loved ones in your life or in your communities that are looking for scholarship opportunities, please encourage them to apply, and we make it as easy as possible for students to submit one application and be eligible for multiple opportunities at their local college. This is also the time of year where we're looking at our requirements for our endowment match program. This is one of the best kept tools we have in our advancement toolkit of resources, where we can actually leverage additional funds to match earnings on endowment accounts for donors. So that lets a donor amplify the impact that their gift can have. So we're working to make that as flexible and available to our donors as possible, because it is truly an amazing opportunity to add additional resources to their gift. And typically those are often directed towards scholarships or our emergency funds. And I'm going to, there we go. So we've got some examples today. I know sometimes we can look at numbers and forget the people behind that information who are really making it happen. And these are some great examples of gifts from Hopkinsville and Maysville that have been able to endow some new scholarships for accounting and business students. Another one for students specifically for Bath County, and also another large award for student emergency funds. So we're excited for them. West Kentucky also had a large donation to their student emergency fund to students who were impacted by the tornado in their area, and also a $100,000 endowment for Ashland for nursing students, as well as another emergency fund endowment. So I just think it's important to make sure we all understand the critical role that philanthropy plays in not only making sure our students have access to KCTCS colleges, but have the tools needed through those emergency fund programs to be successful. Another great example is with Somerset. It has several different ways they've engaged donors recently. They had a celebration where they recognized distinguished alumni and also raised over $50,000 for their foundation. They also played a key role in celebrating the life of a former employee. So philanthropy often brings people together as well to celebrate legacy and make an impact longer term. And there's a photo here of a celebration of life that was held for that employee. Also, one of the images you see here is naming that was done for a donor to name a welding lab. So this is also another opportunity we love, where we can bring together corporate partners and help them accomplish their visibility goals in a community and name a space on a campus. So we're excited to see that come to fruition. More importantly, though, I think it's important to pause and recognize that while the holidays might be stressful for each of us, we're trying to run around and do a lot of things, that it's not always a time of joy for our students. It can be stressful and anxiety provoking when they're not sure how they're going to pay bills and do things that to us might sound as simple as putting dinner on the table when it comes to Thanksgiving. So our advancement offices recognize this. They see the needs that students have, and they mobilize supporters around meeting students' basic needs. And I thought you might want to see some of the things our colleges have done to make sure that students have access to food and meals for the holidays. And also, I personally can speak to the fact that at Elizabethtown, we had corporate volunteer teams come together. They were packing and sorting meals, doing a lot of the heavy lifting that we could not have undertaken just as staff or faculty at the college level. So not only are we able to help students, we're able to engage our community in the process, and that allows us to accomplish so much more than any of us could alone. This is something I just, again, thought you might want to see. It's really hard to read, I'm sorry, but these are notes that were made on a bulletin board in an area at OCTC. And one of the notes says, thank you for helping my 5, 3, and 2-year-old get me get through this past couple of weeks. We love OCTC. To the people who helped me get food and hygiene products for my family, thank you. This has helped me get through tough times. And my favorite, hopefully someday we can donate and help people like me. So it's easy for me to be passionate about philanthropy when you see how it creates a ripple effect that when we help a student, hopefully we're also creating them into a future philanthropist who will give back when they are in a position to do so. So we just appreciate all the donors, all the advancement staff, the foundation boards, all the work that goes into creating these opportunities for our students. I think it's important, again, when we talk about there are donors out there, to make sure we understand who those types of supporters are. And I just wanted to bring you up to speed on a report that we recently closed out through the foundation for a $100,000 grant that was received to provide tutoring, college and career navigation support, and ESL instruction to students at 4 colleges with multiple and significant barriers. But the research from this grant showed that we were able to leverage over $1.8 million in scholarships, and that those students, despite all the challenges they faced, earned over 5,200 credits towards their degrees. So we see the success. We know that it is possible, that when we have resources from our community, from grant funders, from private donors, that we can help students with even the biggest challenges overcome those obstacles and be successful. And we thank Truist for their belief and partnership in that effort. Finally, we are making plans for Giving Day 2025. Please save the date of April 16th. And we are currently working with donors to develop match and challenge gifts. We already have a great one on the table from the PJC Foundation for West Kentucky students and supporters. So I would love to challenge the board to be thinking. We would love to talk next time you convene or prior to then about whether the board would be interested in offering a match or challenge gift to inspire philanthropy across the system on our biggest day of giving, which is Giving Day in April. This could be anything from special matches for students or alumni who participate, or companies. We have a new technology platform now that will allow real-time updates to happen throughout the day so we can see progress towards those match and challenge goals. And we know that they really do motivate donors to participate. So please be thinking about if that's something you would like to be involved in. And we also will have a Giving Day Ambassador Toolkit available for you. So we would appreciate your support in raising visibility for the many ways that donors can engage in supporting their local college, and also hopefully considering what we can do as a system to support this effort, since it's only our 2nd year and we would love to make it even bigger and better than last year. So with that, any questions or comments?
Few comments, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to say thank you to Dr. Stith. Like other areas, she's been focused on compliance. We're very appreciative of everything that you and your team has done, and she is staffing up right now. She's doing an amazing job as we share her time with ECTC. So thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to those serving on our KCTCS Foundation Board, chaired by Stephanie Bell. They had a meeting, I think, as recently as last week. I want to thank you for their leadership, and perhaps maybe in the future we have a joint meeting with the foundation board. Maybe they can meet in the morning prior to us getting started so you can see what that's all about. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to our presidents and their respective foundation boards. You know, every month we get together for our PLT meetings and we start off with celebrations. And this week, to no surprise, not one, but multiple of them say, I have 100,000 donation here. Here's 100,000 here. And it's becoming such a regular celebration that their hard work out in their respective areas of the state should not go undervalued. We really appreciate everything you do. And let's not forget that in some areas of the state, through their foundations, free rides, essentially last dollar free rides for students from particular areas. We have Evolve 502 in Louisville, which if you're a Jefferson County resident, more or less, your experience at JCTC is covered, or significant portions of that. Same thing in Christian County with the Rotary as well. Amazing fundraisers. Same thing down in McCracken County, where there's a joint initiative with their local government where they're actually have taxpayer resources that are helping this to be a free ride. And imagine one day if that was the case across the entire state, which goes back to SJR about the willingness to show when you have the funding or the partnerships from the business community to make this happen. We never want the expense of college to get in the way of somebody trying to achieve their dream with us. And so I want to say a special thanks to the work that you all are doing. The last thing I have is that we have a celebration just as recently as last week. The head of the Public Service Commission, Angie Hatton, who I served with in the legislature, came in and said, we want to start a scholarship at each of the 16 colleges that has to do with utility realm in Kentucky, and the 811 call before you dig number, something that us in the farm community, we call that number before we dig. And they're going to start a $1,000 scholarship at each of our 16 colleges dedicated to those who are outside working every day that are related to the utility industry. And then lastly, I think we can do a better job of the facilitation of non-monetary donations as well. That we'll just take welding, for example. You're using a lot of material that can't be used again once the coursework is done. Some of our colleges have it completely supplied. I think Henderson, 100% of the metal for their welding program is donated by a local company. Others, we have to go out and buy it. And so I think that in 2025, we would like to start a donation initiative that's highly publicized, that gets it out there about what incentives a company or private individual may get and achieve if they make that donation. It also might help steer us in a way of receiving gifts that we may not want. Sometimes people like to donate things that doesn't quite fit into our portfolio, but we know that we need airplanes so that we can have aviation mechanics. These are not cheap items. And you never know what's out there, particularly in the healthcare area as well, not cheap and structural modules that we have to cover. And so we would like to look forward in 2025 to have a more formal donation initiative for KCTCS across the state.
Okay. Any more questions or comments about? Yes.
At the beginning, before you did the giving day and all the donation things, I was going to ask you, when you said CRM, what does that mean?
Yes, ma'am. So CRM stands for Constituent Relationship Management System, I believe. It is a database, but with an ability to track and manage activities that you undertake with a particular constituent. So for example, I am in our CRM for philanthropy. We use a tool called Razor's Edge, and you see my donation history. If I was logging actions with myself, you would see those listed, like meetings or events I'd been to or solicitations I'd received. So it's a little bit deeper than just the financial information on an individual, but how we're interacting with that person. Is that helpful? And I'm sorry to be in the jargon business today. Thanks for asking. It's a good question.
Any other questions for Dr. Stiff? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And one of the things that I forgot to mention yesterday with Dr. Quarles' efforts throughout the year is with the foundation. He has definitely brought more emphasis and more interest into the foundation that was there in the past, and we really appreciate that. It's definitely a lot of help to our students and our colleges. So I appreciate that as well, and everybody else's hard work and efforts to help with the foundations. We are coming to the close of our meeting, and I know that disappoints some of the Western Kentuckians, but yeah, I think we have come to where our next meeting of the KCTCS Board of Regents will be March 13th and 14th. That will be at the Versailles. It'll be back here. So looking forward to that. And with that being said, I would like to wish everybody, I'm sorry, Dr. Wells.
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just had a few announcements, if you don't mind. You sound like you're wrapping up. Just want to make sure. you're at this point. So just a few things coming up. So Monday, big announcement, University of Louisville statewide transfer agreement. It's gonna be great. Tuesday, we'll be testifying with our SJR results to the Interim Committee on Education. You all are more welcome to attend. It starts at 11 a.m. as we talk about the next steps with that implementation. February 6th, again, that's our fundraiser for our food pantries in coordination with Feeding Kentucky, or food banks. If you'd like to go to that, let us know. Shannon will send out an email with the information on that. April 16th is Giving Day, and I cleared it with Dr. Stith. There is no ethical or legal violation if you all want to donate on that day. There's no conflict of interest. If you all would like to donate, there's nothing holding you back. We appreciate that. In May, we're going to do something that hasn't been done in 10 years at KCTCS, and that's bringing us back to having a system-wide conference. Do you ever attend New Horizons? Yes. So we're bringing back a version of it. It's going to be cost effective. It'll be held here for somewhat of a soft relaunch. And this used to be a conference that used to move around the state, quite large, and we welcome your input for those that had been to it before. But we will make sure that we start bringing it back, that it's really focused, including a rebranding, what used to be called New Horizons. So if you have a good name for the conference, let us know. But it's going to focus on professional development. It's going to also have a component where we recognize outstanding faculty, outstanding staff across the system. We're working on a student component as well that might be separate. It also gives us an opportunity to have a professional development area that, as if we pull our resources, it might be a more focused area than doing it at the 16 different locations across Kentucky. It will have an online component, so we don't want cost or availability or driving to get in the way for our KCTCS team members. It also gives us an opportunity for those donors who want the recognition to be recognized, to say thank you to them. And then also an opportunity for us to say thank you to our advocates across not just government, but across industry as well, those who have gone to bat for us. And so we're looking forward to that as well. And in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for almost a full year on the job. I'm focused on compliance, stability of the system, and building a team this year. I look forward to what's next. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for those comments and updates, and we really appreciate your efforts and appreciate all the cabinet, the PLT, all the staff and faculty here at KCTCS. We could not make it happen without all of those factions. So Board of Regents, appreciate all of your all's efforts throughout the year as well. So without any other comments or updates?
I got a quick.
Yes.
Go ahead. I just want to make one. We all have seen the news, high visibility person in New York assassinated. You guys are all high visibilities in your community. Take care of yourself, shore up your security. If there's things that we need to be doing as well, let's all make sure that we're dealing with those things.
Thank you.
Yes.
Quick question, probably for all of the college presidents. I was just thinking about the fact that in being in the manufacturing, we have a lot of things that we throw away. Cardboard, wood, metals, like you talked about, free metals to do some of the welding. I'm trying to figure out, how do we understand as manufacturers what each of the colleges might need. So I'd be more than willing to kind of work on that, or not sure how the information will get to me, but it's something I'm curious about.
We would love to recruit you on this, but we need to come up with a list of things that we need and things that we don't need as well. I think that's like step one, is get an inventory of things, but no things items, but also the most costly areas of instruction. Again, welding being a great example. And it's not just give us metal, it's the type of metal as well. And then get that to the private sector.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, it is 10:15 and I would like to have a motion for us to adjourn.
Moved. I'm waiting for that.
Okay, we know who that came from.
Second.
We have a second.
Any objections? Motion passes. We are adjourned.
Thank you all and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you all. Oh, yeah, get that. We just gotta figure out what we need for.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead.